Hey everybody, welcome to June's sampler block. So I'm going to get started right away. The first thing we're going to do is make half square triangles, which I know we've all done, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I have marked a diagonal line on the back side of my background fabric. It's actually the lightest fabric that you're going to mark your line on. So I've marked my line and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on both sides of this line. Okay, I'm going to sew the other side. And I'm going to cut it on that diagonal line, and then I'm going to press it. Okay, and I'm going to press it towards the darker fabric. So you are going to make a total of 4 of these. Okay, so here's my half square triangle, and I'm going to cut off these little bits. And you are probably going to want to use scissors. Okay, so here's one of them. And I'm going to take a plain square. I need to line it up right. So I'm going to take a half square triangle and a plain square and sew it together like this. Okay. And you are going to make a total of 4 of these things. Okay, and I'm going to press it towards the plain square because it's going to press a lot flatter going that way, so I'm going to press it this way. Okay. You're going to have 4 of those, so I'm going to set that aside. All right, the next thing we're going to do is sew some strips together. So I have this strip and I have this one, so I'm going to sew them together, and it's okay if they're different lengths. I'm just going to sew that. Actually, I want to sew it from this end. Okay. Okay, so these are sewn together. I'm going to press. And I guess press towards the darker side, but I'm going to go towards this little piece because that one's darker, and I just want to press it towards that little strip. So this is what I have. So I'm going to trim off this side and make it nice and straight. And what I typically do is, I'll show you with this ruler. I line up my fabric, the seam of my fabric on a line, like an inch line on my ruler to get something straight. So I have a line straight here along the seam line, and then I'm going to cut it there. So I'm just straightening out the fabric first, straightening the end. Okay, so this is my good straight end. And now I'm going to cut, for each of these strip sets, I'm going to cut them 6.5 inches wide. And this happens to be a 6.5 inch wide ruler. So I'm going to cut it as wide as this ruler, but you want 6.5 inches. And you're going to have extra. So this is what you have. Now, I'm going to take some other squares of the background, and I've already marked a diagonal line on the back side of all of them. And I'm going to put it in a corner. So I have my corner of my rectangle. I'm lining this up, and I want the diagonal line to be here and end here with, so when I fold it back, I have the long part of my strip down here. And I'm going to sew right on the line. I'm not going to sew a 1/4 inch. I'm going to sew right on this line. So I need to move my needle over. I need to put my needle back in the center. Okay, so I'm going to sew right on the line. Oh, and let me put a pin in, and I want to talk about something. I'm just going to put this pin in place just so nothing moves. So I like to sew it with starting at this end, and the reason I sew it at this end is because if I sew it at this end, sometimes it will eat the point, and this point will go down inside your machine and it'll just be a real mess. But if you start at this end, it can't eat the fabric, and so you're going to get a nice seam along here. And again, I'm sewing right on that line. And I need to do that twice. Okay, pinned in place, start sewing here. Okay, I forgot scissors. So I'm going to take out the pins, and then I like to press it first. So press it flat, and then I'm going to press this piece over to the side so it looks like this. All right, now that I've pressed it, I'm going to trim these two pieces of fabric on the back side. I'm going to trim this to a 1/4 inch seam allowance so we can get rid of some of that bulk. And I find if I press it first and then trim, then I don't get it as much distortion than if I trim it and then press it. It wants to change its shape. It wants to get out of square. Okay, so this is what I have. I'm going to take another one of these squares, and I'll show you what I'm doing in just a second. I'm going to pin it in place. Okay, so we're kind of making flying geese. So this seam is going this way, and I want that seam to go this way. And then when I pull it back, well, I pinned it, but I have a lot of the darker blue at the bottom. So let me pin the other one. And you want to think flying geese. So again, I'm going to start sewing here, not here. So I'm going to start sewing here, right on that marked line. Let me take out the pins. And see what we get when we fold back that fabric. So I'm going to press it. Okay, so I have that, and I'm going to again fold this back and cut these two layers back to 1/4 inch. You can measure it or you can just cut it off. I guess the right way to do it is to measure that 1/4 inch. Okay. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to sew those together. Okay. And you're going to make a total of 4 of these. And I need my 1/4 inch again. There we go. All right, so I'm going to make another one. now I'm going to press it, and I'm going to press it towards the half square triangle and the plain square. All right. What am I doing? Yeah. Okay, so that's the block, and now I'm just going to sew it together. So let me sew these two together. These two. All right, I'm going to press it towards this flying geese because I have less seams going on there. All right, now I'm just going to sew this seam. So I'm going to match that center seam. My seams are pressed in opposite directions, so it should lay flatter. All right, so if I want to make sure that these flying geese line up right here, what I can do is I can take a pin, like a marking pin, and I'm going to put it through. That is a tough pin. Okay. Right where the seam all meets, right up in here, I'm going to put in a pin. Right where that seam is. I know you can't see that. So I'm going to take the other part of the pin and I'm going to pin like the very peak of the flying geese. And so I make sure my pin is in there and it's perpendicular to the fabric and it's nice and straight through there. And once I have that nice and straight, I actually take another pin and I pin the seam. This pin is still perpendicular, and then I can pull out this pin and I have my seam all pinned and marked. So I can do the same thing on the opposite side. I find the point of that flying geese, put the pin in there, find out where the point of the flying geese is on the other piece of fabric, put the pin through there, make sure it all lines up, take another pin, actually pin it with that pin. This pin should still be standing perpendicular. Take out that marking pin, and then I should be good to go. Everything should match. Should. Okay, I'm going to get about a stitch or two away from that pin. Pull out the pin. All right, let's see if that worked. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but it meets spot on right there. And pretty good on the other side too. So we just use those pins as like a marking pin to get everything lined up, and it really works. Some things are worth that extra step. Okay, that's the end of the block. Thanks for watching.